My name is Norma Graham, and I'm a librarian at the Hanover Public Library. The book for which I'm advocating is From the Ashes, My Story of Being Métis, Homeless, and Finding My Way by Jessie Thistle. I chose this book because it's been on the bestseller list for Canadian nonfiction for well over a year, which is quite a unique thing. It was also selected to compete in last year's Canada Reads, so it's clearly well regarded. I'm also interested in reading stories by and about Canada's Métis and Indigenous people, and to better understand the history and the importance of reconciliation. This book is the memoir of a Métis man's journey through childhood trauma, addiction, and homelessness, and his fight to overcome these formidable challenges and reach for healing and wholeness. It's about discovering and claiming his identity and using that to pull himself to safety. Jessie Thistle tells the story of his life in an honest and vulnerable way, his chaos and dislocation, his terrible pain, and the pain he caused those who cared about him. From the Ashes is a tough book to read. You watch this man's life happen like a slow motion train wreck. Drugs, dropping out of school, being ostracized by his family, homelessness, jail. Finally, Jessie washes up before a judge who gives him the chance at rehab. Desperate to live, Jessie grabs this opportunity with both hands. The strength of will and determination, the energy and the courage that this must have taken is mind-blowing. Along the way, Jessie falls in love with Lucy, who helps him adjust to living a normal life and encourages him to follow his dreams of higher education. He rediscovers his Métis roots and comes to a clear understanding of how intergenerational trauma has damaged Indigenous and Métis people in this country. Jessie Thistle has gone on to achieve some of the highest academic honors in Canada and now teaches Indigenous studies at York University. From the Ashes is a story of Jessie Thistle's fall and his redemption, but the larger story here is the impact of intergenerational trauma that leads to addiction and homelessness. It's not just Indigenous people who suffer from intergenerational trauma. In my work in public libraries, I often meet people who are suffering from its impacts. But for Indigenous people, that trauma has been wider and deeper because of the actions of the Canadian government historically. The dislocation from the land and from their identity runs deep, and Jessie Thistle's story is but one of thousands. But there is hope, there is resilience, and it begins with understanding. The core of strength that Jessie Thistle drew upon to pull himself out of the death spiral that he was in came from connection. He reconnected to his family, his heritage, and his people's story, and ultimately himself. Johann Hari, who's the author of Chasing the Scream, a book about addiction, wrote that the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is human connection. Personally, what I took from Jessie Thistle's story is this: you never know how a kind word, a helpful gesture, a smile, and the courage to make connection can make a difference in someone's life. Jessie Thistle saved himself because somewhere deep inside, he believed he was worth saving. The more we can do that for each other in small and large ways, the better all our lives can be. After reading From the Ashes, if I could have one wish granted, it would be for everyone to understand our own privilege and to have empathy and compassion for those who haven't had our good fortune. You know, books are empathy generators. If we all read From the Ashes and other books about trauma, addiction, mental illness, and homelessness, and understand how these things can derail a life, perhaps we'd be further along the path to solving these problems. It's all about empathy and understanding. From the Ashes is not an easy book to read, but it is a very important book to read for all Canadians. We here in Grey Bruce are not insulated from addiction, homelessness, and the intergenerational trauma that causes them. We can see the effects all around us in every community in the region. Jesse Thistle tells us in this book about the ways trauma ravages lives, but he also tells us that there are solutions. So please read From the Ashes by Jesse Thistle. Vote for it on Grey County Reads webpage and be as kind as you can, whenever you can. My name is Norma Graham. Goodbye.